Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to master F123 setups, going into detail about the aerodynamics, transmission, suspension geometry, suspension in general, the braking ability of the car and the tyres that are connected to the road. So, the first topic we're going to be going into detail about is going to be the front wing and rear wing aerodynamical ability of the Formula 1 car. Stating the obvious here, but we have to cover the baseline. The clicks, what relative are to the numbers within the game, as in we have 30, 35, 40 and 50 as well. The higher you go with the in-game value, that correlates to having more downforce within the game. Of course, with downforce comes drag as well, so it's important to try and get these wing levels as low as possible while still maintaining good corner ability as well. Somewhere like Monaco, you'll be looking to have higher on the spectrum of the wing, and somewhere like Monza, you'll be looking to go lower and try to maximize your drag efficiency of the car. A baseline rule is that more low-speed corners you have on a track, the more ability you want to have to run higher downforce. The longer straights you have on a track, the lower wing you want to be using as well. So let's get into the baseline of the wing. The wing difference between the front and rear is very, very critical to having a good balance within the car. Run too much of an offset difference like I'm doing here with 50 and 20 on the wing level, and you're going to see the car is already snapping and losing rear grip and confidence as well, showing you very quickly through turn 1 that already the car is not going to be that stable and it's trying to snap everywhere to lose the traction. Whereas now, if we do the polar opposite of that and we put the front wing to its minimum value, it's going to give us catastrophic understeer. Although that catastrophic understeer will always be predictable and generally will be better for you in a racing scenario to keep your lap time consistent and manage the tyre wear. Generally, you always want to have the fastest race car possible, but sometimes having a predictable race car is also good as well. Although this is way too extreme, and you can see with the minimum front wing value, it is quite frankly impossible to even go through turn 1 and turn 2 flat out with this Formula 1 car. So clearly we have a situation of two extremes that are not generating performance. You want to be looking to have a wing gap that suits your driving style. Personally, I like to have a little bit of understeer in my car, what gives the car predictability and gives me confidence as a natural reaction to the predictability, and that allows me to drive the car to its absolute limit and get the most out of my own personal performance as well. Every driver has a different driving style what they want to uniquely master, and having this slight bit of understeer is my fastest way about that. Through turn 1, through turn 2, you can see the car is very nice and predictable and not sliding around at all. And I'm able to be very predictable, pick up my apexes, carry good minimum speed through the apexes and the exits alike. Opening DRS. And somewhere that is always very good to test out your wing levels is Silverstone, as it's got full of medium and high speed corners alike. One of the best sequences of corners in the world for what? Enjoyment. But also to test out your wing levels is Cops Corner and Maggers and Beckett's followed up straight after. In the F123 game, if you can take Cops Corner flat out and then have the ability to go through Mags and Beckett's without having dramatic understeer or dramatic oversteer, is probably a good wing level to have. So you can see I went through Mags and Beckett's with good balance in the car, and it wasn't that understeery and was not really that oversteery as well, but Cops Corner was not flat out. So that tells me I need to go 3 clicks up on either wing level, and now let's see if we can get through Cops Corner flat out. So coming up to Cop's Corner with the higher wing level but the same balance within the car, and this time can easily take Cop's Corner flat out. So it just goes to show we have the same balance within the car, just with 3 clicks higher front and rear wing can make a dramatic difference of how the car is handling in the high speed corners especially. So it's very critical to make sure you master this setting to optimize lap time. As I said at the head of this, it's very critical to keep this number as low as possible to maximize your straight line speed potential. With that being said, we're going to move on to the transmission, aka the differential of the car. We have the on throttle and the off throttle, pretty self-explanatory, but going deeper into the detail of what these settings will do. When you have 100% on throttle differential, think that the differential is welded, much like a drift car, that the rear tyres will only travel at the same speed as each other and will have the inability to travel at independent speed. This is fantastic for straight line traction. Whenever your car is traveling in a very straight line, for example, off the start maybe, this will allow the car to be very predictable and for both tyres to always spin at exactly the same time and allow you the ability to have more control over the car. The downside of this, as I'm going to actually demonstrate to you on track now, is this will cause the car to have a lot of inherent understeer. Naturally, the tyres need to have a little bit of a speed differential to help rotate the car, especially in the low speed corners here. You can see we're coming on the power and the car is just understeering. Although it's very predictable, it has a lot of understeer due to the fact that the rear tyres are locked to travelling at exactly the same speed. When we're going to be lowering this setting to be using, actually going extreme to 50% on throttle differential, complete polar opposite of 100% and the lowest differential setting available to you in the F1 game. The differential will become much more free and the tyres will be spinning at independent speeds as well. And you can see the car is rotating much better, but has a lot more ability to have traction loss and instability due to that. What is actually happening within the rear tyres is the differential will be located at the back of the gearbox, or around the gearbox anyway, connecting into the ability to control the speed of the tyres and the rotation and the entry speed of the tyres as well. In real Formula 1 you have an entry, middle, exit and a general differential as well. In the F1 game we only have on throttle and off throttle to keep it more simple for the generic users trying to play the game, learn and adapt to the process of driving a Formula 1 car. But if you're looking at the rear tyres on the car right now, if you're running 50% differential like I'm doing right now, if I bring up the menu you can see it clearly on the bottom right hand side of the screen. When accelerating, when the one tyre loses traction, it will be spinning at a faster rate of RPM compared to the other tyre that has maintained the traction. This is fantastic for going through corners when the car needs to rotate, as naturally the inside tyre will always be travelling a slightly tighter radius, and because of that tighter radius will require a different level of grip to be performing at its optimal lap time potential. While you run the differential at 100%, as you can see on the bottom right hand side of the screen, the tyres will be completely locked to the same speed, and when travelling to the exit of the corner, one tyre will always be limited to a lower grip threshold by the inside tyre of the car. Another great example of that is actually going into Brooklands. It's a very long corner and you're actually going to be spending quite a lot of time getting back to 100% power on the exit, and you're always turning here as you're going to start to set up the next corner here of Luffield. If I was approaching this corner now at 100% differential, as you can see in the bottom right hand side of the screen, the inside tyre will be my grip limitation and I can only apply the power to what the inside tyre can actually do. Maybe I can only reach 80% throttle in this example. While running a lower differential setting, i.e. 50% in this situation, the tyres will be spinning at an independent rate of RPM, and this will allow me to have the confidence knowing that each tyre is performing to its optimum grip window, and this maybe can allow me to go to 85% power and not have wheel spin. A net gain of 5% throttle can be about 1.5 tenths per corner. Over a lap, that'll be adding up to a huge amount. Over a race distance, it's multiple seconds. So the key with the differential setting for the on throttle is to find a balance between having rotation in the car. The lower you go, the more rotation you'll have, and having stability in the car as well. If you want a stable car, 60-65% on throttle differential will be just fine for you. Speaking about the off throttle differential, it's doing exactly the same functionality but only on the entry to the corner. Running 50% and 100% differential with the off throttle will have dramatic effects to rotation on entry and understeer on entry as well. You can see we're running 100% and the car is just not turning. Really grip limited, and I had to stamp on the power to get the car to rotate on the exit. Whereas when I'm going to be running 50% on throttle differential, the car will then rotate very nicely, but can be slightly unpredictable in some circumstances. Locking up the rear on entry will be a big limitation of this setup. But that being said, if you can control it, then you can let the car rotate so much more freely, as the same logic is applying to the on-throttle differential and off-throttle differential. But the key differentiating factor when you're determining your setup direction is going to be on entry to the corner, and in the braking zone, you're going to be using the off-throttle differential. And as soon as you get apex onwards, you're using the on-throttle differential. So make sure to not mix these up, as it will have disastrous effects to your lap time potential. Going into the next setting, that is going to be your suspension geometry. And to break this down in a very simple way, it's a very dynamic and complex setup item on the car. If you have less front camber, you will have better braking grip, as the car will be more flat. Well, I should say the tyres are going to be more flat, and there'll be more contact patch with the road, leading to better grip in the braking zone and low speed corners as well. The more front camber you have, the more the tyre is going to be leaned over in the braking zone. If you can see my hand in the bottom left hand side of the screen, when the camber is flat, you get the contact patch like this, demonstrating by my hand. Actually, a better demonstration will be my phone, as it's a much more flat item. So when you're running 2.5 degrees of negative front camber, the car is sitting more flat like this. So when the braking zone arrives and the low speed corners arrive, you have more contact patch. When you're running minus 3.5 within the game, although it's slightly more exaggerated with my phone example in the webcam, you will have a contact patch more looks like this, what leads to a much less contact patch, and will have much more limited ability in the braking zone of the track and low speed corners as well. The upside of this is the contact patch will actually become much more effective in the high speed corner, as the tyre leans over naturally. So in a simplistic term, you want to be running more camber for high speed corners and less camber for braking zones and low speed corners alike. Finding a balance between this is going to be critical, and the same kind of concept applies to the rear camber as well. The more camber, or the more negative camber I should say, you have with the rear, the more grip you will have in the high speed corners, and the less negative camber you have, the more traction you'll have in low speed corners and straight line traction zones as well. If you're having a lot of oversteer in high speed corners or in combined corner load exits, and this is when you're turning and accelerating at the same time, add a few clicks of rear camber, and this will help bring stability within the car. Speaking about the front toe, Basically, this is quite, when you put it to yourself, it can be a very simple setup item but has dramatic effects to the car ability to handle. The more front toe you have, effectively the more turn-in and initial grip the car will produce. The car will be ready, it'll be pointy on the corner corner entry, my apologies. To summarize that again, so there's no confusion, the car will be more pointy on corner entry with more front toe. When you are coming to setting up the front toe, it's going to be very difficult to maximize this setting because, like I say, the more front toe you have, the more corner turning grip you can produce, but that cornering grip will evaporate extremely quickly and will lose grip very rapidly. So I recommend running as low of a toe setting as you can actually get away with. 2, 3 seems to be a good number to be using within the game to get a good balance between having front toe turn in and having front grip stability generally in the corner as well. And the rear toe is a very powerful tool to be using that has a huge effect on the understeer of the car. Effectively, when you're running minimum rear toe in, you have the most rotation of the car possible. As the more that you're adding, the more rear grip you are effectively adding to the car, in effect understeer. And understeer will hurt your lap time. It will give you more consistency, but can be very negative towards your lap time generally. So, if you're having oversteer and general instability in the car, try increasing the rear toe value to maybe 15, and this will give you a good stability level within the car. Speaking about the front suspension, and this is going to be a very critical part of the setup. Quite basically, what you're going to be looking to do is over curbs and over bumps in the track, you want your car platform to be nice, smooth, precise, and comfortable as well if you have the predictability within the car to go consistently fast. The more bumps you have on the track and more curbing you have, i.e. Monaco, Imola, and tracks like this are very heavy on the bumps and very heavy on the curb usage, you want to be lowering the front suspension stiffness to give you more pliability and adaptability of the car to be going over the bumps of the track. The less bumps and the more smooth of a surface you have on the track, and the less curb usage you're going to be using, you want to be increasing that front stiffness to try and increase the overall grip of the car. Remember, it's overall a balance, and this balancing act will be critical to your lap time potential. The rear suspension is very similar, but can have a much more drastic effect towards the traction of the car as well. In summary, the more bumps you have, the less rear suspension you want to be using. The less bumps you have, you can go up on the rear suspension. But also remember, in the low speed grip parts of the track, you will want to be running as low rear suspension as possible to inherently gain more and more traction from the car. The more, or less I should say, rear suspension that you're using, the less the car will rotate in high-speed corners. So again, it's a balancing act, and normally running 10 to 13 can be an okay number to be running in the game, generally around track to track as well. The front anti-roll bar is a very powerful tool to change your confidence actually in the driving. In summary, the stiffer the front anti-roll bar, the more turn-in the car will have, but will suffer in the medium and long speed corners. A tight and twisty track like Monaco, you ought to be running more front anti-roll bar to help you get the nose of the car into the corner faster and more quickly. A more high-speed flowing track like Silverstone, you want to be reducing it a little bit to still maintain good grip on the entry to the corner, but not sacrificing that grip in the medium and long speed corners such as Brooklyn's, Luffield, Magazine Beckett's and Cops Corner, whereas the final two corners on the track and the first sector in general, you want to be using that stiffer front anti-roll bar to maximize the turning potential initially within the cornering phase of the apex. The rear anti-roll bar is a very powerful tool as well. Exactly the same job as the front anti-roll bar. The more rear anti-roll bar you're using, the more rotation you'll have, and the less rear anti-roll bar you'll be using, the less rotation you'll have, but will inherently help gain a little bit of traction as well. So you want to be keeping this number maybe around 6, 7, 8 in my experience on the game, to try and help that sort of rotation within the car as well. The front and rear ride height, one of the most powerful figures within the game to setting up and extracting the maximum potential here as an outlier to performance. You want to be getting these settings as low as possible to help generate more downforce from the floor of the car. The floor of the car is just as powerful for generating downforce as the front and rear wing, in fact. And setting them up as low as possible to generate more grip, especially in the high-speed corners, will generate temps per lap. You want to be setting up a little bit of rake within the car as well, and this goes down to your driver preference. And generally, the more rake you're having, and rake is the difference between the front and rear ride height, the more rake you're having, the more stability it can bring, and the more understeer you will have within the car. And the less rake you're having, the more oversteer and snappy the car will become as well. So generally, setting this up as low of a value as possible is going to be critical. The braking pressure is just going to be 100% on this game. If you run this at 80% or 90%, anything other than 100%, you're losing braking potential from the car, and it's just going to cost you a lap time. With the front brake bias, it's going to be very dynamic compared to qualifying, race, rain conditions, and tire saving and battling conditions as well. Generally, running the range between 58 and 55 brake bias seems to be a good window of operating potential within this game so far. If you're suffering with front lockups, move the front brake bias rearward. If you're suffering with rear lockups, move it slightly forward, and this will help you generate grip within the potential of the tires. Tire pressures, and this is going to be very, very important. This game has been updated to really sophisticate the ability to set up these tire pressures to maximize lap time potential. If you're running too high on the tire pressure, your tires will start to overheat. Obvious statement, I know. You want to be running these in an optimal window, and when you're driving out on track, especially in the GP mode and online sections of the game, you will see in the bottom right hand side of the game where the tire temperatures are saying 100 on the surface and 100 on the carcass temperature as well. Obviously, we are in time trial mode right now, and that is going to be meaning the tire temperatures are locked, but while driving in online and GP mode and career mode alike, the tire temperatures are going to be consistently changing, and you have to be setting up your tire pressure to be accommodating for that. Generally in the game, when you start to overheat your tires, the green symbol within the tires will actually turn to orange and red accordingly to how extreme you have overheated the tires. You'll want to be setting up your tire temperatures right on the window of that. So when you're driving and qualifying, at the very end of your qualifying lap, you want your tires to be just about within that operating window, never overheating though. When setting up for a racing situation, I suggest setting up your tire pressures for your hardest compound that you'll be running. For example, if you know that you're only planning to run the medium compound tires, set up your tire pressures for the medium compound tires as you'll be driving longer in the race, theoretically with those tires anyway compared to the softs, so it will have a greater impact to your overall race time potential. With that being said, though, this has been the complete setup for the F1 game. For obvious reasons, with the F1 esports season coming up very shortly, I can't share my exact setups and my exact philosophies behind the setups. But I can, and I have given you a good guideline and a good knowledge base to be working forward with, and how you can start to adapt your setups for your own driving style. But with that being said, I've been Brendon Leigh. If you have any questions about the setup, be sure to post them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to get back to you and explain them further for you at home. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, informative, and descriptive nature for you at home. Guys, it was actually ciao ciao, bye bye, ciao ciao.